It's time for all the news you need and more. Brookland is Live starts right now.
And we are live here from Brooklyn. It is 2:02 on this Monday, June 8th. I'm Jackson Mitchell, and it's still going to be with you as we are now in the second week of June. Lots of headlines we're going to get to today. Developments overseas in the Iran war. That is coming up. But first, we want to take you to a live event happening right now over in DC. That's what we're going to start you off with here right now. Dr. Oz, you see there, as well as Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. speaking, and the Undersecretary of Education as well, speaking on the future of nutrition education. Let's listen in.
School contaminates the entire medical space. It's something that the Secretary appropriately wants to stop. The President noticed it, and this initiative is allowing us to address a great wrong that's been tolerated for decades. So here's the challenge. How do we make it easier to be healthy in America? Fundamentally, that is the Baja movement. And as Secretary pointed out, with chronic disease driving most of the expenses coming from my part of the agency, it's Medicare and Medicaid, it's incumbent upon us to make the next generation of clinicians aware and activated when it comes to these issues, to give a framework for how to prevent disease by allowing things like nutrition to prosper. I do not think it's a coincidence that it is generally not taught in our schools. It's not an area where clinicians think they'll make much money. It's not an area they put their pride in. I do think it's a remarkably fertile area for academicians to start pursuing careers, but we have got to get it taught in medical school to instigate this process, to get people excited about the possibility. So at CMS, here's what we're doing. As the medical schools join the commitment, with accreditors and assessors and standards organizations all engaged, we have a great opportunity to create a competency around nutrition. So let me give you two concrete examples. The Rural Health Transformation Fund, which was the single most ambitious plan to help Americans living in rural parts of the country. It's 60 million of us with a life expectancy dramatically lower than the urban parts of the country. We gave those $50 billion out with several little opportunities for states to prove themselves, including, it turns out, the opportunity to prove that they care about nutrition by including nutrition criteria in their CME testing in their states. 24 states agreed and took us up on this challenge, and they got more money, significantly more, because they're willing to teach within the CME process about nutrition. We've had medical schools started with this rural transformation funding money that are proposed. We've got whole different ways of talking about nutrition in states that historically have not been thinking a lot about nutrition, or at least it would seem so. But when their governors got wind of this opportunity to make a difference for their people, they took advantage of it. Second biggest area of focus is the hospital food themselves. Now, it is a pejorative, I think many of you would agree, to talk about the food. If you go to a friend's house and say, that tasted like hospital food. Right? It's not a step up generally from what you might have expected at a fast food restaurant. And it turns out that there are opportunities for hospitals to experiment and improve in the quality of food. One great example by my friend and Secretary Kennedy's friend, Jeff Zakarian, a world-class chef who revitalized the Tampa General food supply and was able to deliver bespoke, high-quality, real whole meals, food coming out of the ground that it looks like when you pick it as when you consume it. And he's able to do that without costing the hospital significantly more money. Was less than 5% increase in budget. Why? Because it turns out about a quarter of the traditional hospital food gets thrown away because nobody would eat it. When I was training as a resident, I was advised by the chief resident not to eat the hospital food, lest I get sick. And he wasn't kidding. And so most of us learn not to eat the food the patients eat because we won't do well with that food, especially over a long period of time. So how do we actually fix this, and how do we get to the right spot? The Secretary's pushed for pledges from hospitals all over the country. We traveled down to the Jack Nicklaus Children's Hospital in Miami to kick this process off. We've had many hospitals now, including the major organizations, embrace the idea of using the right side up food triangle, food pyramid, that we created with the Department of Agriculture in order to make sure the food that's being served in the hospitals is appropriate. And again, without a meaningful cost difference, surrounding error, frankly, compared to overall hospital expenses, it's a wise move. CMS will push these agendas and many more. Let me leave you with a quick number. $800 billion we spend roughly nationwide on prescription medications. Secretary, myself, and others have worked hard to make sure we have most favored nation drug pricing. But what is the best way to reduce the amount of money we spend on drugs? To not need them. You cannot sprinkle a Lipitor on a kielbasa and expect to save money. right? The right way to do it is to get folks to cut down on the kielbasas and other processed meats and a bunch of other things that are now mentioned appropriately in the food pyramid. I think we have been able to train physicians in a way that's very different than the way I was trained. And I'll leave you with one phrase: culinary nutrition, because that is what actually is being discussed in medical schools. And by that I mean, when you know lycopene is good for you, and you know tomatoes have lycopene in them, you don't chew into a tomato, because you cannot release the lycopene from the tomato unless you skin it, boil it, skin it, and then mix it with some fat, olive oil. That's called pasta sauce. And that's why it works, culinary nutrition. So let me turn it over to the academic mind in the group who's going to speak a bit for the medical schools and some of the accrediting bodies.
Thank you for allowing me to join you today. I'm Dr. Jessica Snowden. I am a pediatrician and the Vice Chancellor for Research at University of Tennessee Health Sciences. And I will say, my teenager assumes pasta sauce is a vegetable, especially if it's on pizza. So thank you, all of you, for my fellow panelists, for inviting me to join this conversation today. As a pediatrician and a scientist and an academic health leader, I'm pleased to represent the University of Tennessee and my colleagues across the country who recognize this is an important conversation. One of the most remarkable aspects of this initiative for me really is that it recognizes something we all see every day in our clinical work and in our communities. Nutrition is not a side issue in healthcare. It's fundamental to many of the things that we need to have a healthy lifespan. Whether we're talking about healthy pregnancies or child development, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, or just being able to get into our retirement, able to enjoy it, nutrition is fundamental for all of those things, for any major health outcome that we see. At the same time, many of our communities that bear the highest burden of these chronic diseases face significant barriers to accessing healthy foods and evidence-based support. It's our job as the people who train our healthcare providers to make sure we can bridge that gap. That reality is especially true in rural communities like the one I grew up in. Many of these communities feed America, and yet they don't have access to the kinds of healthy foods, preventative services, and healthcare that they need to make sure they're as healthy as they're providing all of us to be. At UT Health Sciences, we've got tremendous enthusiasm among our learners for our current nutrition and educational offerings and culinary medicine programs. Our trainees recognize that helping patients improve their health requires more than just prescribing a medicine. It requires understanding how people live, eat, shop, cook, and care for their families where they are in the communities that they live in. Our programs integrate nutrition science, culinary medicine, and lifestyle interventions among the most those are among the most educationally engaging experiences we offer. And I'm very excited because our champion agreed to let me help teach in 2027. Our learners want more opportunities to develop those skills in culinary medicine, whether it's in our elective or when our many student interest groups across all levels of training and across all of my colleges, because we recognize the importance of food as medicine for our patients. We're looking forward to partnering with other groups through this initiative to learn new things. What have other people done that help us move this forward? In particular for us, through the Tennessee Rural Healthcare Center of Excellence, we're already working alongside state government, health systems, community organizations, local leaders, and our agricultural extension partners across the state to identify practical solutions that improve health where people live. If I give you a solution that works in urban DC, it's not necessarily going to work in small town Tennessee, and we need to acknowledge that and help people bridge those gaps. In particular, for us, our University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture actually engages thousands of Tennesseans across the state in healthy lifestyle and nutrition initiatives in all 95 of our counties where we can meet people where they are. These partnerships are essential because lasting improvements in nutrition and health can't be achieved by any one group alone. It requires all of us to collaborate across education, across government, across agriculture, public health, and community organizations if we want to make a significant change. One of the things that is most exciting for me about this particular initiative is it's the opportunity to connect scientific evidence and nutrition education with real-world implementation. As universities, we help generate the evidence that informs what's going to move forward. We train the workforce. We evaluate outcomes to help you figure out what works and what doesn't work. And importantly, we can help you figure out how to scale things so that they are implementable in a variety of communities. Our community partners are equally important because they're the ones who help us guide these solutions to be practical, trusted, and responsive to local needs. As someone who grew up in the Deep South, if I were to come in with a Mediterranean diet today, I would get laughed out of my grandmother's house. We need to find a way to help bridge those gaps and ease people towards where they need to be. As a pediatrician, I'm particularly encouraged by the emphasis that any work on nutrition has on prevention. Many of the chronic diseases that challenge our communities begin decades before they're diagnosed. Investing in children and their families in any way, but in particularly in helping them adapt healthy nutrition and lifestyle initiatives will pay off for generations to come. I look forward to all I'm going to learn from our colleagues that have taken on this initiative and really look forward to taking action to put evidence into the implementation and help our communities be healthier. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you to our incredible speakers. We're now going to begin our Q&A. We have our ladies here with the mics. We ask that you state your first and last name and outlet, and also please focus your questions on today's announcement. I'll start with Arthur.
Thank you, Secretary Kennedy and Undersecretary Kent. You both talked about federal funding for the medical schools. What happens if they don't meet these 40-hour requirements? What happens if they don't meet the 40-hour federal funding requirement for the medical schools, these 73 medical schools? And also, Secretary Kennedy, if you can answer this question, what would the CDC be prepared to do if there is a human case of the new world screwworm in America?
So I can answer the first question, as that's related to the event today. So there's no penalty if the schools are not meeting it, but they have publicly committed on a public-facing website. I think the great thing about this initiative is that we've let the medical schools be the adults in the room, right? So they've put their commitments out forward. We trust that they'll do that. They've put their name and their reputation at stake. Anybody can go to hhs.gov/nutrition-education. They can see the commitments. They can see the wonderful work that our colleagues are doing. And so we don't have any plans to do anything punitively. We think that the positive nature of this event is reflected in their work that they've posted publicly.
Great. Okay, we move on to the next one. Right there. Yep. Thank you.
Liam Cosgrove with Zero Hedge. This one's for Secretary Kennedy. It's not exactly related to this, but it is a disease that seems to be increasing that prevents people from being able to reach a healthy nutrition, and that's the rise of this alpha-gal syndrome. That is a tick-borne disease. Last month, Joe Rogan and Congressman Tim Burchett were talking about the increase of it, and even these social media reports of farmers finding boxes of ticks on their farms. They're unsubstantiated, but I'm wondering if this is something you're looking into, whether you've reached out to those farmers and found whether they have alpha-gal, whether those tick boxes are real, whether they have alpha-gal. We do know that the World Economic Forum has hosted experts who do muse about using such a disease to reduce red meat consumption. Have you seen that? Have you heard of the reports that I'm referring to?
Our press team will get back to you on that one. We want to focus on today's announcement. Thank you for your question.
Oh,
Next one?
He
Oh, do you want? Okay.
Really quickly. We are, last week I went to New Hampshire to announce a series of programs to address this explosion of alpha-gal, and we take it very seriously. One of the epicenters is Martha's Vineyard, where 50% of the adult population is now affected. It is really a devastating disease. You can't eat red meat for the rest of your life. We are looking at medications that can serve as both prophylactics and also potentially cures for it. We're funding those studies now, and we're working with the companies that are making those. We're also launched a major effort on tick control through a number of different strategies that address deer populations. The fact these are the three ticks that are causing most of the tick-borne diseases all breed on deer. and we're looking at strategies for limiting their breeding capacity.
And any idea if the tick boxes, whether that claim is true?
We're going to move on from that. Thanks. Next question, Carmen. Right here. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Carmen Pong from Politico. Secretary, I understand that you won't necessarily have a say. That was my computer. That you won't have a say in the curriculum, but obviously, as you know, there are disagreements in the scientific community about sort of like how much red meat to eat, how much whole milk to consume. You know, people say that could contribute to a number of chronic diseases. So I was wondering, like, sort of like, what do you have to say about that? Would you be happy if schools teach nutrition, even though they might teach stuff that you don't necessarily agree with? Like, for example, when it comes to the amount of red meat consumption, whole milk, and things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, our objective is not to dictate what the nutrition curricula should be. These medical schools are some of the smartest people in the country. They are trying to do good science. They're trying to do evidence-based medicine. They're going to come up with different recommendations and different strategies. That's a good thing for our country. These are laboratories, and people are going to learn from each other. The schools are going to learn from each other, and ultimately, that's how America works. But our job is not to dictate curriculum. We brought nutritionists from the best universities in the country together, over a dozen of them, and we basically locked them in the room for 11 months and had them come up with nutrition guidelines. Every line, every recommendation is cited in source. The peer-reviewed publications, government databases, other authoritative sources. We did our best. We could have made mistakes on that. We're going to constantly revise it as the science evolves. But we're going to leave it up to the medical schools to figure out what the best curriculum is for their students. We know they're all committed to this, and they're going to figure out different approaches for it, but all of them are going to be, great.
Okay, we'll take one more. Paige.
Paige Winfield, Cunningham with Notice. Secretary Kennedy, I wanted to ask you about nutrition in terms of food reforms. I know you promised a definition of ultra-processed foods was coming soon. There's the GRAS reform that's been sitting at OMB. When can we expect action on those two things?
Stand by.
Love it. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Safe travels. Thanks, everyone.
Alrighty, you are listening live there to an event right now in Washington, D.C. The Health and Human Services and the Education Department's coming together here on the future of nutrition education, as well as that doctor there that also spoke on all of this. And you can hear the music in the background as they now stand for a picture there. So that was, again, being held there in Washington, D.C. Alrighty, we do have a little bit of breaking news to get to. This is coming in over the weekend. Nitya Raman will advance in the election with Karen Bass to the general election. This is in the race to become the next mayor of Los Angeles. Now, in California, they do have a 50% rule. Therefore, if you get 50% or above, you move forward here. That did not happen in any of this. Therefore, it will advance to a runoff election. I believe that says general election. That is my fault. I was thinking about the governor's race. Excuse me. So they have a 50% rule in California. Neither candidate got 50%. Spencer Pratt was above Nitya Raman for quite some time until over this weekend when we got some new results in. And now, Decision Desk HQ, Brookland News, able to call that race, saying that Nitya Raman will move forward to the runoff election there. President Trump has already begun weighing in on all of this on Truth Social, and I'll read you his, and I'll pull it up for you again. He says, quote, "Not possible for Spencer Pratt to have lost the LA runoffs after the big lead he had. Third world nation, rigged elections. Now they'll be working on great guy Steve Hilton. Won't have results for possibly 2 weeks, according to officials." President DJT There you go. And in an interview over the weekend that aired on Sunday with NBC News, it actually got pretty heated, and he walked off of that interview after the host of Meet the Press, Kristen Walker, was pressing him for why you're saying there's fraud in these elections, but you're providing no election. It was not only the California election that she did that, and she noted that California is slower at counting ballots. They always have been. And then it would go on to the 2020 election, false claims that the president has made that he actually won that election. That would continue, and then the president would take his mic off and step out of the interview before it was expected to be over. So now we're getting those results in right now. Again, Karen Bass, Nitya Raman expect to advance to the general election. I do want to go to the California governor's race because this is another race that we are monitoring. Now, this is a primary race, so things are a little different here. So the LA mayoral race, that was a legitimate election. That was not the primary to become the LA mayor. That was the race for LA mayor. So that is going to be a race to follow there. But this is a primary election. This is the race we are watching to see who will move forward into the general election coming up this November. Xavier Becerra has been projected by DDHQ to move forward. That was on June 4th, so days ago now, 4 days ago. But Steve Hilton is the one to watch here. Will it be Steve Hilton or Tom Steyer as we see more results come in? And again, we've seen the change in results coming from California when we talk about the LA mayoral race, because we saw Spencer Pratt was above Nitya Raman for quite some time, and then Spencer Pratt went back under Nitya Raman, and that is when DDHQ made that call that Nitya Raman would advance with Karen Bass. So we have seen how these elections are shaped and how quickly they can change, and I'll note we're following them. The second there's a call made, we're going to bring it to you live, so please stick with us, and we will bring you there live. Alrighty, right now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sneak in the first break of the hour. When we come back, we've got more news on the other side. There's been a few events on Capitol Hill, and we actually are standing by because we want to talk to you about that $70 million package that the House passed to fund ICE and CBP. We're going to talk to you a little about that. The Rules Committee voting on it a little earlier in the day, I believe, and we are standing by for a House vote that could come at any moment. So stick with us here. We'll be right back here in just a few moments. Alrighty, welcome back here into Brooklyn News Live. We are getting a little bit of breaking news, and as you take a look on the left side of your screen, live at the House Rules Committee, which is holding a meeting right now, and then on the other side, Washington D.C. there, I should say, the House floor. Excuse me. They are right now debating several different bills, but the news here is that the U.S. House could vote at as early as tomorrow on a $70 billion package to fund immigration enforcement agencies. This comes after the Senate had passed the measure early Friday, working on a 52 to 47 vote. Now, inside the Secure America Act, what it's being called here, it would fund immigration and customs enforcement and border patrol for the next 3 years. This will be through the end of the president's term, and it was passed using a complicated procedural maneuver. This is in the Senate, of course, we're talking about here, to get around the Senate filibuster with 0 Democratic votes in support. Now, in the House, they don't have the filibuster rule like the Senate does. It's just majority rules. So in the House, this is likely expected to pass and then head to the president's desk. The president also likely to pass it. The lone Republican to vote against this bill in the Senate was Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who said it was circumvented the Senate's regular bipartisan appropriations process and failed to eliminate a controversial $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund that critics say could be used to compensate Trump's political allies. Senate Budget Panel Chair Lindsey Graham defended the bill, saying Republicans were, quote, forced to use the reconciliation process because Democrats objected during the appropriations process to give any money to Border Patrol and ICE, effectively shutting our border security down, unquote. Again, a final House vote could come as early as Tuesday, as again, we take a look at those 2 live feeds right now. We are monitoring both of them, and we'll bring you updates when this voting for the Secure America Act comes. So we're standing by for that. We will bring you there live right now. Representative Brandon Gill, the Republican from Texas, debating legislation on the House floor. We are going to listen in for just a few moments here. We're going to have what you need to know on the Iran war coming up after this. Stick with us.
This program was so successful that it was made permanent just over a decade later. Over the years, these authorities have resulted in creative ideas coming from agency employees themselves, contributing to the saving of millions in taxpayer dollars. These cost-cutting ideas included allowing veterans to use otherwise safe discarded medicine and eliminating wasteful printing of the Federal Register. It is time that Congress does more to expand the cost-saving potential of federal employees by expanding these authorities. H.R. 428, as amended, increases incentives for federal employees by allowing cash awards for reporting wasteful spending and improper payments before funds go out the door. The best way to recover misspent tax dollars is to not misspend them in the first place. I support this important legislation, which helps preserve Congress's constitutional role in the appropriations process and helps reduce wasteful spending. I thank Congressman Chuck Fleischmann for bringing this creative solution to preventing fraud to the Oversight Committee and for working with the committee to expand it to address improper payments. I encourage my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 428 as well, the Bonuses for Cost Cutters and Fraud Preventers Act. This bipartisan bill would increase the maximum cash bonus awarded to federal employees who report waste, fraud, and abuse from $10,000 to $20,000. Increasing this award will encourage more federal workers to come forward and report on waste and improper spending, and it will reward employees for acting in the best interest of American taxpayers. The bill also requires agencies to report on the wasteful and improper spending reported by employees and promoting transparency. I thank my colleagues for their work on this bill and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischmann.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the ranking member. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill. Let me begin by stating a straightforward fact. the federal government spends excessively, and much of these funds are wasted. The Bonuses for Cost Cutters Act offers a practical solution to ensure that taxpayers' hard-earned dollars are managed wisely and efficiently. This legislation takes our existing federal awards program, a program that already rewards employees who identify fraud, waste, and mismanagement, and expands it. Under this legislation, any federal employee who identifies wasteful operational expenses that an agency itself determines are not required for its stated purpose can bring that information forward. The agency will then be required to propose those funds for rescission. On top of that, we double the maximum cash award available to employees who identify wasteful spending. Federal employees are often the first to recognize when funds are allocated to outdated programs or when bureaucratic practices prioritize institutional interest over those of taxpayers. For too long, there has been no incentive to speak up, and in some cases, real disincentives have existed. This bill addresses that issue. Tennessee's 3rd District, my district, is home to thousands of dedicated federal employees at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and other federal sites throughout our region. These hard-working public servants take their responsibilities to taxpayers seriously. H.R. 428 honors their commitment by giving them a meaningful role in eliminating waste and rewarding them for delivering results to the people who fund our government. We are taking these steps at a critical moment. The American people have given us a clear mandate to rein in spending. This administration is actively working to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse.
Alrighty, you are listening live there to the House floor. Representative Chuck Fleischman there delivering remarks. We will get back to the House floor coming up here in just a few moments. The Iran war, it's a big deal right now. As we are now getting new details, overnight strikes between Israel and Iran that have since come to a pause. We want to get you caught up to date on, well, the momentous amount of developments over in Iran. So in the early hours this morning, Israel unleashed missile strikes on Iran with dozens of Israeli warplanes targeting Iranian air defenses that were being rebuilt after earlier fighting. Now, Iranian citizens reported explosions in Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz, And Iran media reported that the country's airports were shut down. Israel also struck targets at a major petrochemical complex in southwestern Iran. President Trump called on both sides to immediately stop the attacks, and Iran's military subsequently said it was halting further strikes for now, claiming Israel had, quote, learned a lesson. An Israeli official confirmed Israel agreed to stop attacking Iran, but made clear military operations in Lebanon would continue. Now, this breakdown comes nearly over 100 days since the April ceasefire and multiple failed ceasefire attempts, essentially attempts to extend this ceasefire that we have reported extensively here on Brookland News. Israel and Lebanon agreed to a ceasefire that required Hezbollah, but not Israel, to stop attacks and called for a demilitarized zone in parts of southern Lebanon currently under Israeli occupation. Hezbollah rejected that deal outright. Negotiations Lebanon's President Aoun warned that the latest round of negotiations had represented a, quote, last opportunity, saying each party bears responsibility if it fails to positively respond there. Now, as of this morning, again, both sides appear to be standing down. For now, Iran has declared an end to its military operations, as I was just noting a few moments ago. This comes as the broader regional picture remains dire. The Dow Jones fell nearly 0.31% this morning as the fresh escalation reunited geopolitical risk for investors, with the WTI crude oil futures jumping over 3% to 93.45 per barrel, and Brent crude oil surging about 3.6% to nearly 96.50 a barrel. Now, after that comes after Iran launched at least 3 rounds of ballistic missiles at Israel overnight. However, as trading opened Monday, markets showed some resilience. The S&P gained 0.93%, the Dow edged up 0.58%, and the Nasdaq rose 1.44%. So oil prices, of course, have been a big deal throughout this whole entire thing. Let's get you those fuel prices. Give me 1 second. We're having some issues with our system really quickly. Should get them any moment now, though. Your fuel prices right now, national and state and local averages, as we've been bringing you those for so long now. Right now, 416, the national average. That is down from the 430, the 450, I believe we were reporting on at one time. The national average yesterday was 417. Today is in Arkansas, 380, 366. In Jonesboro. It's a story to follow. We are following it, and we'll bring you updates on this entire war as we get them. So stick with us for that as well. This comes after we are now learning that IDF, take a look at this graphic there, the IDF now announcing the elimination of 3 senior Islamic Jihad commanders in a strike in central Gaza on Saturday. Those killed included the head of Islamic Jihad's Engineering and Specializations Array, who was responsible for developing the group's engineering capabilities and was considered a key active operative. The deputy head of the engineering array, who was eliminated alongside him in the same strike, on the head of the Islamic Jihad's anti-tank missile array in the northern sector of the Gaza Strip, who had advanced numerous anti-tank attacks against IDF troops in recent years. The IDF stated that all 3 had recently been advancing in attacks against troops in Israel, quote, in violation of the ceasefire agreement. We are also now getting a reaction from Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a listen here.
1 year ago, we embarked on a historic attack against the Iranian plan to destroy us with nuclear weapons. We stopped this threat, and we eliminated Khamenei. Had we not acted with enough force and in time, we wouldn't be here. And I pledge, and I commit again, Iran shall never possess nuclear weapons. We acted against Hezbollah with the same resolve. Hezbollah planned to invade the Galilee with thousands, and they also planned to bombard Israeli cities with 150,000 rockets and missiles. We stopped this threat too, and we took out Nasrallah. And I want to tell you, our brave soldiers, how can I say this, are tearing Hezbollah apart. We continue to destroy all their terror infrastructure in the security zone.
President Trump now also weighing in on the new strikes overnight, saying, quote, both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to do an immediate ceasefire. Final negotiations on, quote, peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity, getting in its way. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. Things should move quickly. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So there you go, President Trump. He's continuing these kind of the same remarks that he's made over and over here, that, you know, Iran wants to make a deal, even though we are seeing Israel striking Iran overnight. What's also key in that Meet the Press interview we talked about a little bit earlier in the show, President Trump said that he calls the shots. Prime Minister in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, does not. So that is something notable to keep an eye on. That is, again, an interview that aired on Meet the Press over the weekend. I want to take you right now a live look at Capitol Hill, a cloudy day on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. there. We want to take you back to the House floor, where lawmakers are continuing to debate legislation. Let's take you there and begin listening in once again.
This is the governance of the United States Copyright Office. Because the Copyright Office carries out executive-type functions, H.R. 602A provides that the Register of Copyrights will be appointed by the President with advice and consent of the Senate. Now, some of the improvements that were made just within the last couple of months made sure we had a smooth working there, because the Copyright Office, while it's an executive branch, has to work closely with the Librarian of Congress, and I believe the language that was ironed out between the parties makes a lot of sense and works well for the American people. My bill better aligns government responsibilities with the appropriate constitutional framework. Ultimately, the bill is about clarity, accountability, and good governance. By modernizing leadership structures and clarifying lines of authority, we can strengthen the institutions that support Congress and serve the nation as a whole. And we can ensure that these institutions are positioned to serve both Congress and the American people more effectively for years to come. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 6028, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, sir. I rise in support of H.R. 6028, the Legislative Branch Agencies Clarification Act. The bill updates the appointment process for the heads of two legislative branch agencies, the Library of Congress and Government Publishing Office, and creates a new presidential appointment subject to Senate confirmation for the Registrar of Copyrights. And I do want to thank the sponsor of the bill and my colleague on the Committee on House Administration, Mr. Griffith, and Chairman Stile, and to both their staffs for working with us to improve prior versions of the legislation. And I do want to, for the legislative record, I'll probably repeat some of the things that my colleague has said, but the amended bill makes clear that the U.S. Copyright Office, and particularly currently part of the library, remains in the legislative branch, and it protects the Copyright Office workforce. All of them will continue to enjoy the same rights, privileges, and protections they hold today as library employees. That was very important to us. I have long said that the Library of Congress should be appointed by Congress, the librarian. And still, we must make this change thoughtfully and mindful of the consequences, particularly, again, for the Copyright Office. Copyright authority is enshrined in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution, and the Copyright Office has resided in the legislative branch for well over a century. And I appreciate Mr. Griffith's comments about the 19th century and how different things were and the importance of doing all of this work. And this bill is really very important, particularly because so much of the work is legislative and because of the ability for the modern legislature to have responsibility here. All of that should remain within the legislature, remain within the Congress, and that's the intent of this bill. The copyright economy contributes, and this is really something of an astounding figure, more than $2 trillion to our economy each year, supports more than 11 million American jobs, and only with a stable, reliable, and apolitical copyright system will we continue to have the benefits of that economy. The bill helps preserve it at a critical moment for copyright stakeholders and the millions of library users. And I particularly point that out in the midst of the emergence of AI, which uses great many materials for learning that are copyrighted. So these issues continue to be in the public eye, and they'll continue to be important. The library and the Copyright Office have operated in partnership for more than 150 years. And the Copyright Office depends on the library's infrastructure, and the library builds its collections through copyright deposits. So severing that relationship would harm both institutions, something we clearly do not want to do. And the revised bill recognizes that. It establishes a significant transition period. It allows the Copyright Office to continue using library support services and requires the registrar to consult with the librarian before taking any action affecting the library's access to copyright deposits. It safeguards the rights of Copyright Office employees, as I indicated earlier, and keeps the office in the legislative branch where it belongs. And again, I want to thank Chairman Stile and certainly the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Griffith, for accepting these changes, for working in a cooperative, collaborative, and bipartisan spirit. It has taken a little while, but I think the final product is improved as a result of it. So for too long, Congress has allowed its own authority and capacity to atrophy. The library, the Copyright Office, the other support agencies we rely on are funded from a legislative branch budget that amounts to roughly 0.4% of all federal discretionary spending. If we're serious about legislating on questions as complex, as I mentioned, as AI and copyright, we must be serious about sustaining the institutions that make that work possible. So, there are challenges. I think this was the work of compromise, so there are some changes that I think both sides would have like to make, but this does ensure that the Librarian of Congress can be hired and fired only by Congress, and does so while preserving both the Library and Copyright Office as the preeminent institutions in their fields. And I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the comments of my colleague, Mr. Morelli. Agree with everything that he added and said, some of which we overlapped, some of which we didn't, but this was truly a work where we were trying to do the right thing for the right purposes, and both sides worked together to reach what I think is actually a better bill. I know there were compromises, but it's a better bill than what we originally had, and I appreciate that. And with that, I reserve and am prepared to close whenever my colleague is.
Gentleman from Virginia reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, let me thank the sponsor of the bill, my friend, Mr. Griffith, for his hard work. Thank Chairman Stile for his partnership and working together to protect these important legislative branch agencies and Congress's Article I prerogatives. I urge my colleagues to support this very fine piece of legislation and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 6028, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6028 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Alrighty, just another day on Capitol Hill. That's kind of how things work there. You are taking a look at kind of what is considered like an argument day. You have argument time, and essentially you head to the floor, you argue for your bill. And in case this bill was about the copyright office, it was what's the word? Nonpartisan bill. That's the word I'm looking for. And you see, it passed there. Alrighty, we're gonna sneak in a quick break. More to come when we come back. Alrighty, for the remainder 10 minutes of the show we have for you, we are going to take you to the House Rules Committee. So we were just going to talk a little how Congress works. This is the committee that sees all bills before they make it to the House floor. They vote if it is kind of good enough. I don't know. You know what I mean? Does it follow all the rules that it needs to follow to make it to the House floor? Let's take a listen.
That tweet. My amendment ends all of this, and it ensures that ICE cannot use funds to detain U.S. citizens. My second amendment ensures that no money in this bill goes towards detaining people in private for-profit immigration detention centers. These private immigration prisons are taking taxpayer dollars and funneling them into their own pockets and into the campaigns of their Republican supporters. Not only is this a total waste of taxpayer dollars that should be spent on lowering costs for the American people, it has led to absolutely inhumane conditions. In the interest of their own profits, these immigrant detention centers have completely violated existing detention centers' standards requirements. Reports abound of appalling conditions, overcrowding, medical neglect, and inedible food. In Geo Group's Delaney Hall in New Jersey, the only medical care available for people with cancer is Tylenol. Guards are beating and pepper spraying immigrants who dare to request better conditions. 50 people have died in detention just since Trump came back into office, a stunning and unprecedented number that is more than all the deaths in detention in the previous 5 years combined. Border Czar Tom Homan and acting ICE Director David Venturella both used to work for the GEO Group, so it's no surprise that they want to keep money flowing to them. My amendment would stop that shameful process. My third amendment would stop ICE and CBP from arresting anyone for an immigration violation without a warrant that is signed by an immigration or a magistrate judge. ICE and CBP are racially profiling anyone they think might be an immigrant. My amendment brings accountability to their practices by requiring a warrant and ensuring that they target their resources on folks who actually pose a danger to public safety, as opposed to a dad who's picking up his kid or a teacher on his way to school. My last amendment would prevent funding from being used to hire any person into the federal government who is convicted for participating in the January 6th insurrection. Trying to overthrow our democracy should be disqualifying for federal service. And yet Trump recently hired a convicted January 6th rioter to work in the Pentagon. It is simply outrageous to have an insurrectionist working in the department tasked with our national security. This is a bad bill, but with my amendments, it could at least address some of the most glaring issues in immigration enforcement and protecting democracy under this administration. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Jayapal. Ms. Stansberry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on this reconciliation package and the amendments we have in front of the committee today. At a time when families across New Mexico and this country are struggling to put food on the table, a roof over their heads, and to keep the lights on, this reconciliation bill hands nearly $70 billion in taxpayer dollars over to ICE and Border Patrol for 3 years with little to no oversight. Just a blank check bypassing the normal congressional appropriations process. And I think we all have to ask why. Because obviously, you wouldn't be able to pass this package if you went through the normal appropriations process. And just like the blank check that you gave ICE last year, totaling $140 billion, you are bypassing the normal appropriations process for the remainder of the Trump administration by passing this bill through reconciliation for 3 years. Because the American people have made it clear that they do not support the cruel, inhumane, and unconstitutional violations of civil rights and human indignities that we have watched over the last year and a half under this administration. Terrorizing communities, deploying troops to American cities, Americans who have been shot point blank in the face by ICE agents with no accountability. Families torn apart, children detained in private prisons, dozens dead in private detention centers with no oversight, and millions of families in this country living in fear. Grandparents who are afraid to go to doctor's appointments and to go grocery shopping, children who are afraid to go to school right now, and countless others who are uncertain of their futures. In New Mexico, our communities are living in fear. Just a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who has lived in this country for over 40 years, a legal resident and the primary caretaker of his aging wife and grandchildren, was called into an ICE appointment and was uncertain if he would return and what would happen to his family. Dozens of cases pending in my office of professionals, doctors, nurses, and scientists who don't know if their work visas are going to be renewed, DACA recipients who are hearing that they could have their status revoked even though they've never known another home, and New Mexicans in detention centers without access to counsel or their families.
Alrighty, before we run out of time here, we do want to get to a look at your forecast. We'll start you off with what is a few clouds in the sky type of day here in Brookland. You're taking a live look at the RDOT camera there. Forecast actually not bad at all. We could see a few more storms as we go throughout the day. Most of them are out of the way though, so that is a good sign for us, I guess. But we're going to get up to the 90s, you guys. Summer is here, I think, almost. It's so close to being here. Tuesday, 92 is the high, low of 76. And then by Wednesday, 93 and a low of 76. It is going to be hot these next few days. Are you guys ready for those 100-degree plus days when it's 98 degrees but feels like 107? I'm not. I enjoy this weather that we've had, like, not this rain, but if you remember before the rain, we had like this nice 70s every day. I was feeling really, really nice for about a week, but then we had rain, 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 rain. Can I say it one more time? Rain. And now we're back to it being hot. So there you go. Live look in Brooklyn once again there. Time now 2:57 on this Monday, and we're wrapping things up. That is going to conclude our coverage on this Monday. Remember, you can join us every weekday at 2 p.m. I will note this week, and I'll say it again probably tomorrow, but Wednesday we will not be with you. Tomorrow, though, join us 2 p.m. Thursday, join us 2 p.m. Friday, join us 2 p.m. We're here every day but Wednesday this week. Trying to be very consistent with you guys, bringing you guys the headlines every single day. Thank you for joining us so much. We are tracking all of the headlines. It's a busy news week. I will let you know we are tracking, of course, the reconciliation bill we've been talking about for, I don't know, about the last 30 minutes on the House floor when it will go up for a vote, expected tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, I should say. And then we're also tracking the latest developments over in Iran, where, again, major escalation overnight, but then now it's back to being at a pause. We're following it all. When we come back tomorrow, we'll have all of the headlines you need to know and so much more. We will see you later. Stay safe, you guys, and have fun. Have a good rest of your Monday.